Hey, welcome back to the channel. I want to talk about something super frustrating that almost everyone is experiencing right now. Trying to land a remote job. I mean, let's be real. You hear the stats, right? There are literally hundreds of thousands of remote positions available in the US alone, over 270,000 to be precise. So, with that many opportunities floating around, why does it feel like everyone is just completely struggling to actually get one of these jobs? Think back just a few years. It was a completely different story. If you wanted to work remotely, you could usually find something without too much stress. You could easily get hired, start enjoying all those amazing perks of working from literally anywhere, whether it's your couch, a coffee shop, or even another country. But now, it feels almost impossible. Every single job posting you look at, and I mean everyone, has hundreds, sometimes thousands of applicants. And it's not just the competition, the requirements are getting ridiculous. We're talking about employers asking for 3 to 5 years of experience for positions that are supposed to be entry level. Seriously, what is going on? The job market is fundamentally not what it used to be. It has completely shifted beneath our feet. So, in this video, we're not just going to complain about it. We're going to break down exactly why it's so incredibly hard to land an entry-level remote job right now. And most importantly, we're going to show you the precise, practical steps you can start taking today to get hired for your dream remote position, even if you don't have a previous degree or years of experience. We're going to cut through the noise and give you the real-world strategy. It all boils down to several major problems within the current job market that have made finding legitimate remote work feel nearly impossible. Let's dive into the first one. The number of remote jobs is actually shrinking. While the headlines might still talk about remote work, the reality on the ground is different. According to some deep research reported by LinkedIn, the sheer number of remote jobs available has dropped significantly. More importantly, it's far less than the number of people actively looking for those roles. To give you some context, for every one remote position posted, employers are seeing twice the number of applications compared to an office-based role. The interest is absolutely astronomical. But here's the kicker that makes the competition even fiercer. The percentage of remote positions has actually decreased by around half. It went from a high of 20.3% back in 2022 to just 10% in 2024. Think about that. The supply of jobs has been cut in half, and yet, even though only 10% of all jobs are remote, they still receive a staggering 46% of all applications. This creates a massive, undeniable gap where there simply aren't enough jobs to go around for the volume of people who want them. Why is this happening? Well, having workers office-based offers a lot of benefits for businesses. One of the most common reasons employers cite is that they can oversee the work better, maintain company culture, and manage their teams more effectively if everyone is physically working from the office. So, the bottom line is, the supply of remote jobs has decreased considerably over the past couple of years, making the pool much smaller. Now, let's look at the second major issue that every remote job seeker is facing. There are simply too many people wanting remote work. Even as the number of available positions shrinks, the demand has exploded and hasn't really come back down. If we look back to 2019, before the global situation changed things, only about 5.7% of working Americans were remote. That number more than tripled in just 2 years to 17.9%. That meant there were over 19 million remote workers in the US alone. Yes, many of those jobs have since reverted to an in-office setup, but the mindset is completely changed. A huge majority of people, we're talking 98%, still want remote work. And a massive 66% of those people currently work in an office but are desperate to leave. This is what makes the competition so insanely strong. People who already have stable jobs are now actively applying for remote work alongside those who are unemployed. Many of these experienced, currently employed applicants are even saying they're willing to take a pay cut just for the luxury of working remotely. This means you aren't just competing against other entry-level candidates, you are competing against people with years of experience who are willing to lowball their salary just to escape the office commute. And that brings us to the third and final problem remote job seekers face. Employers want to hire people who can already do the job. It makes sense, right? Since there's a flood of experienced people looking for remote positions, employers can afford to be incredibly selective. They can request previous experience for their so-called entry-level positions. They get highly experienced people applying to their remote roles, meaning they don't need to invest the time and effort into training people from scratch. This is a simple equation for the company. It saves them money and resources in the long run. But for you, the entry-level applicant, it makes landing a remote role incredibly competitive because you are constantly up against candidates who already have years of relevant experience. Facing these huge problems, shrinking job supply, exploding competition, and higher experience requirements might feel completely overwhelming if you're a remote job seeker. But don't click away, because the rest of this video is dedicated to the solutions and the practical tips you can use to navigate this environment and land your next remote position, even with no experience. The solutions: how to get hired. Let's start with solution number 1, which is arguably the most critical. The type of career you choose matters. The job market, just like any other market, is based on supply and demand. We know that employers want to hire the best possible person they can. So, if they have an experienced candidate willing to fill their entry-level position, they will choose them over having to train someone new. We also saw that if an employer has a high number of applications for a job in a specific city, they will often choose to make it an office-based role just to reduce the application pool. However, this dynamic works both ways, and this is your opportunity. If there are too few qualified people applying for a specific type of job, what happens? Employers are forced to do two things. They are forced to hire remote to expand their search and find the best fit, and they are often forced to drop the work requirements like years of experience or a specific degree. This is why some careers, like accounting for example, frequently suffer from a shortage of applicants and end up with a consistently high number of remote jobs available. The key is to look for fields where the supply and demand curve is in your favor. Let me give you a harsh reality check using some statistics. College graduates often find it incredibly hard to find a job right after graduation because they picked a career with too much supply. In 2021, US institutions awarded around 134,000 bachelor's degrees in psychology. How many available jobs for psychologists open to candidates with only a bachelor's degree were there that year? A tiny fraction, 307. Similarly, the total number of degrees awarded in sports management was just under 17,000, yet the available jobs in 2024 are only around 1,338. The math just doesn't work out. You're fighting 100 other people for one spot. The intelligent way to tackle this is to choose a career where there is a low supply of workers and a high demand from businesses. That's the sweet spot. It results in employers not only being open to hiring remote workers, but actively dropping the tough work requirements just to fill the position. Here's another interesting dynamic to consider. Sometimes, highly experienced employees will have bad habits, or they've been taught to operate differently from how the new company runs things. In these scenarios, an employer will often opt to hire educated staff, meaning people who are trained exactly how the company needs them to be, over simply experienced staff. So, if your education or training perfectly qualifies you and matches the employer's job posting, you can actually outcompete people with years of previous experience. The key is perfect alignment, which brings us to solution number 2. Choose a career that doesn't benefit from being in person. This sounds obvious, but it's crucial. A job is exponentially more likely to be remote if it can be performed just as well or even better when the employee is not sitting in an office. Employers will always structure their jobs to maximize value. If a job is undeniably better performed in an office, they will strongly prefer to only hire candidates willing to be in person. However, if there's genuinely no difference in performance between working fully remote versus in the office, or better yet, if the work is actually performed more efficiently remotely, then employers become much more open to hiring remote talent. The great news is that there are many careers that check both of these boxes: high demand/low supply and no in-person benefit. Think about fields like technology sales, information technology, IT, accounting, and digital advertising. These are all high-demand jobs that simply don't benefit from the employee being in the office. And here's the best part: there are increasingly clear paths to get into these careers with zero previous experience and no college degree. Stick around until the end, and we'll share exactly how you can land these high-potential roles. Now, a huge part of landing any job, especially without traditional experience, is making sure your education is a perfect match for the job description. It's always ideal if your training is relevant to the career path you want. If your training is too broad, you need to find ways to specifically hone in on the career niche you prefer. The job description is your most valuable tool. It's like a free blueprint for your professional and personal development. By using the job description as a guide for what you need to learn, you set yourself up for guaranteed success. You are learning exactly what the employer wants, making you an ideal candidate. On the flip side, ignoring the job description is like trying to bake a cake without knowing the ingredients. You might pick up things you think you need, but they don't actually contribute to the final product. This is often the problem with the traditional college model. College teaches you lots of different broad skills within a subject. You spend 4 years getting educated, and then you have to figure out how to piece all that knowledge together to land the job you want. This often leaves huge gaps in the exact knowledge you need, or you end up with tons of knowledge that simply doesn't relate to the career you're aiming for. It can feel like a massive waste of time and money. A new study confirms this frustration, showing that 67% of employers strongly believe that a college degree does not prepare people with the relevant, real-world skills needed for work. This is a massive statistic, and it means that the people who have the exact targeted skills and knowledge for a specific career, are the ones who get hired, regardless of whether that knowledge came from a degree or a highly specific training program. So, let's move to solution number 3. Your resume and portfolio need to be laser-focused. Once you've found that sweet spot, a high-demand, low-supply remote career, you need to present yourself to the hiring manager as the perfect pre-trained employee. We're talking about optimizing your resume and portfolio like a professional digital marketer optimizes a website. Most people make a huge mistake by writing a general resume that is supposed to cover all their bases. They just list their previous job duties, their skills, and maybe some achievements. They then use this single, generic resume for every single job application, regardless of whether they are applying for a technical role, a sales role, or a management role. This is the wrong way to go about it. Hiring managers spend on average just 6 seconds reviewing your resume. That's it, 6 seconds. If they have to spend more than those 6 seconds trying to figure out if you're qualified or if your resume is even relevant to the job posting, you're going straight into the reject pile. The key here is customization. You need to tailor your resume and portfolio to perfectly match the specific job description you're applying for. Here's the breakdown of how to do this. 1. Match the keywords. Look closely at the job description. The first thing you need to do is identify all the keywords and specific skills the employer is asking for. If they use terms like Salesforce administration, client onboarding, or SQL database management, those exact terms need to be strategically woven into your resume. Why? Because many large companies use applicant tracking systems, ATS, which are automated filters that scan your resume for keywords. If you don't use the exact language from the job description, the ATS might filter you out before a human being ever sees your application. 2. Tailor your experience. Next, if you lack direct experience in the field, don't just list old, irrelevant job duties. Instead, rewrite your previous experiences to highlight transferable skills that relate to the new role. For example, if you are applying for an IT support role but previously worked in customer service, don't just write "answered customer phone calls." Instead, focus on problem solving. Managed and resolved over 50 daily customer-reported issues, improving first call resolution rate by 15% through rapid diagnostic skills. Even if the product was different, the core skill of troubleshooting is the same.